Welcome to the 10-Minute Treasurer. My name's Jeff Pospisil, and in this video, I'm going to cover the postmark rule for donations. And this is a rule that will help you decide whether or not when you receive a donation, whether it's electronic or by mail or somebody actually just brings it by the office, that when do you record it when it's right in that December, January area. So this can be a little bit tricky, but there is a rule and it's called the postmark rule, and hopefully that helps you. So I don't know exactly how this came about, but here is what I imagine was a situation that the tax court had to decide on, is that there was a donor that they wrote a check on December, but they weren't going to be able to go to church or stop by the church office before that, because normally what would happen is you record the donation when you receive it and you give credit to the donor when you receive it. So instead of being able to stop by the church office, they put it in the mail and it shows up later in January. So the church is looking at this and they know they received it in January, but the check says December. So what do? And the tax court or whoever decided is that you look at the postmark. And so if you never looked too closely at your mail before, every piece of mail has a postmark here. And there's the date right by my finger. So February 7, 2024. So what the postmark rule basically is that is the judge for when the donation should be recorded. And the rule is at that time when they put it in the mail, and that's when the donor gave up control, because you have to give up control of the gift in order to make it. So when you put the check in the offering plate, that's when you're giving up control. When you put it in the mailbox or in the U.S. postal system, that's when you give up control. And you have to make sure you also get it in the mail soon enough that you can get a postmark date of December in there. Because like if you go after their cutoff, for example, if you put it in at 11 p.m. on December 31st, guess what? You're not going to get a postmark date of December. You have to put it in early enough to get that postmark date. So anyway, that's a little bit of an aside. So let me show you how this works then for other donations. So in summary, here's how the postmark rule works. So if a donation comes in by mail, if the check is dated in December and the postmark is in December, then you record it to December. If the check is dated in December, but the postmark is in January, you date the donation in January. One weird thing is if they post date the check. So they mailed the check in December, but the check is dated in January, you record it to January because it's a post-dated check that you really don't have. You shouldn't be able to bring it to the bank until that date on the check. So, but the postmark rule also applies to other types of donations. Another example of this would be if you look at when people either drop money into the offering plate or bring it by the office. So you look at the date received. So if somebody decides to drop a December check at the January worship service, it's dated as of January. The donation is credited as of January. Same thing too as if they stop by on January 2nd to drop off a check for December, guess what? It gets applied to January. As more and more churches are equipped to accept online donations, how do you deal with that? Because a lot of times there's the date when they submit it, and then it's usually a couple days later when it actually hits the church bank account. So this is very similar to the postmark rule because they give up control of that donation when they hit the submit button. So if their donation is submitted on December 31st online, but doesn't hit your bank account until January 3rd, then you would record it as of December. So we go by the date that they submitted it. Now, the other one, which is one that I don't see that often, but there are some churches that have a credit card swipe machine. So a very similar rule. So if you had a December 31st service, they might swipe their card on December 31st, but it still wouldn't hit the church bank account until January 2nd or January 3rd. So because that one, you look at the date that they swiped their card. So it's very similar to the submit date one. All right, hopefully that was helpful. I'll put a couple of useful links out there. There is a bulletin from the IRS that's actually fairly straightforward. It's about 11 years old, but they wrote it for regular people as just useful tips on this kind of thing from the IRS. That's probably the key one. I don't know if I have anything else that I'll probably share, but that's the key one. So if you appreciate this, like, subscribe, share. I always appreciate it. Leave a comment. God bless you. Till next time.